Good evening. Thank you all for coming out this evening. We have run out of some of the proposals right now, but we are printing more, so I will make sure everyone has a copy. It's with great pleasure tonight that we at first have Mr. Wood from Cromwell in Lawrence, who is here to discuss a proposal that they have made to us about installing solar panels. And so we are thrilled to have Mr. Wood with us. And we also have Mr. Clyde Schwanke from Southern Mennonite Church, who has been amazing in providing tons of information, so willing to share. All of the members of their church have just been they astound me how generous they are with their support for what we're trying to do here at First. So I would like to get our program started. And for those of you that do not have the proposal, I will make sure you have one. I'm going to turn it over to Pastor Jenny right now, who will open with a prayer, and then we will begin. Thank you all.
Thank you, Kathy. Let us pray. Gracious and loving God, you have entrusted to us the care of your creation, the land, the sea, the sky, creatures, and each other. Bless us in our conversations tonight as we explore solar power for this congregation and what it could mean. Give us wisdom and insight and an attitude of prayer and hopefulness. These things we pray in your most holy and precious name. Amen.
Thank you, Jenny. And thank you, Steve and Kathy, for organizing a lot of this. Appreciate that very much. Glad to have Clyde here. Solar evangelist Clyde is with us tonight. And good to have you. I'm going to tell you just a little bit about myself, and then a little history, and then do a little kind of an educational about solar. Then we'll do a little deep dive onto how we calculate the bills to know what the savings is, and then we'll go through the proposal. And I guess if they want to ask a question while I'm going along, is that okay? Or okay. All right.
And that goes for people watching online.
Oh.
So if you might speak, if you're watching online, the questions will be relayed and shared.
Okay, that'd be fine. Online, man. Well, I was born and raised in Kansas and lived in 10 counties across Kansas from the I-70 north. And mostly rural towns. I wanted to be a farmer, but I didn't inherit one and I didn't marry into one. So I decided to go into being a county extension ag agent, and also 4-H, of course, it comes with it. So I was able to work with farmers, rural homeowners, people in town even, and I like people, and so I was blessed to have the job. I'm thankful, very thankful that was part of my life. My wife and I have been married 34 years, met her at K-State. I guess I could have worn my purple. This is a little bit purple, but and been married 34 years, and she's a joy to me. My faith calls me to be a good steward. As it says in Genesis, that God gave us, says, steward the planet here. And I appreciate that you all have that interest too. That's why so many churches right now are interested in doing solar is they got some help financially, and it shows that we're being good stewards of our resources. I'm going to tell a little bit about our company. Is this okay? Yeah. So it's not Cromwell Solar that started, but way back in 1982, a gentleman started a company that was doing hot air solar and hot water solar. And then Aaron, who now owns it, our boss, he and Sarah, bought it in 2000. And he came from a background of environmental. And so we actually have two parts to our Cromwell business, is the solar, and we go out about 400-mile radius. And then they have an environmental one that has to do with mold remediation, asbestos, that type of thing. And we have, I don't know how many people across the state, or across the United States, that do this mold remediation and work for our company. We've got about 30 right now in the solar side of it, from salespeople to installers, licensed electricians, and then staff that do sending in the permits and all that type of things. I had an interest in solar back in the 80s. I was in Wabaunsee County as an extension agent. There was a little bit of a crisis, fuel crisis or energy crisis, and I don't even know, can't remember who it was that helped us, but we put on do-it-yourself solar panels where you can set it up on the side of the house, cut a hole in the bottom, cut a hole up here, and it would circulate through, or you could put a fan on it. And we also did solar food dryers. So you could, my wife and I used ours till the wood rotted. But I've had an interest in solar. I also prefer not to pay electric bills or utility bills if I can hold it down. And so in 2010, I was working for Douglas County Extension Office. This is at the fairgrounds. And the board decided to put on a solar system. This only was going to produce about 20% of our electricity, but it's like a lot of educational programs that Extension would put on. This is kind of a demo. We made it so that you could look online if you wanted to on our website, and you could see what the solar was doing. And so it did help save money. It also helped educate about solar. And after 3 years of looking at the results of it, my wife and I said, hey, we're interested in solar. And Cromwell actually won the bid here. And then we asked them to do ours. And so ours was, we signed on, I think, the end of 13, and it was installed in May of 14. And that's about the time I decided to retire and came to work for the company. There's some pictures of church. The one on the right doesn't have a church in it, but there's a church building there. The roof was not very good, so they went ahead and put up a ground mount. These are older ones that when you see them blue and silver framed, you know it's dating them a little bit. These were both installed in Missouri, and it was before I came on. I think this is a Methodist church down at Sedalia. This is a church in Kansas City, Missouri. It has a white membrane roof similar to yours. And as you see, we don't put any holes in a flat roof. I worked as a roofer right out of college before I got my extension job. And flat roofs, you don't want holes in them because sooner or later they're going to be leaking. So we ballast them down with these blocks, and it keeps them, we tilt them up 10 degrees like we would for yours. And you can't see, there's about a foot difference here. When we get towards the end, there's some more pictures that'll show that there's because we're facing them south, and we don't want the the shade to hit the next row. So you've got to have a little space for it. And we don't tip them up too far because the wind starts picking up on them. This was a colonial church in Prairie Village, the first one I had the privilege of helping them get solar. And it was installed it was turned on in 2019 of November. And they had gathered some folks from the city council. This was their kind of a christening day. This is south facing here. And just about 6 months ago, they had one of their members that said, because this is only doing, I think, about 20% of their church. Anyway, they said, we'll throw in 20,000 if you want to get some more. We had to go back here and go on the east side. But with that 30% tax credit, that helped add to that 20, so it's getting closer to a $30,000 system for them. And we're just about ready to start installing it. I don't have any pictures that are very good. This is the Mennonite Church, Southern Mennonite Church, Clyde's, over, I forget which street it's on, but 37th. This is facing south, and it's a gymnasium. And so it's pretty up high, so these trees are not going to shade it. And from down here, I took a picture one time, but because of the slope of the roof and all, it didn't make it. So this is what we showed him in the proposal, what it was going to look like. And so it was turned on in April of 2021. This is just a house out in the country. We do a lot of residentials. A lot of those homes don't have any trees around them. Like if you live in town, you have to sometimes deal with trees. This is the newer residential solar panels that are all black. And in some homeowner associations, some places, they require an all black panel. They will melt the snow quicker. Mine's a blue, and it takes longer to melt off than if you have an all black one. This is out in the country. People will ask me, well, that's a lot of electricity for that barn, but there's an wire running underneath to a pretty good sized house right out south of Lawrence. There's some pretty good sized houses, but this barn takes care of that house. And here's a home that this would be facing south because that's the way the panels, we're going to put them. If you've got a ground mount, you're going to put it facing south. This home's south roofs were not very good, and the east and west are pretty steep. If you've got pretty flat, not too steep at east and west, it works pretty good. But you start getting like this, you're only getting a half a day of actual sun. Because the panels make the most energy when it's shining straight at them. So in the morning, you got an edge, it's lower, and then up through the daytime, and then down in the evening. Here's my favorite one that we've done. I wished I'd have sold this, but I didn't. This is the Community Merc Co-op in Lawrence, Kansas. It's a grocery store, pretty much all natural. And grocery stores use a lot of energy. We're able to install this in the middle of the winter because it's on a flat roof and it's got a wall around it. So our workers, as long as it's not too cold, they'll be out there working even in the wintertime. And then, of course, nobody can see that. But in the summer, when most of the KU students were out of town, we had a carport company build this frame, and then we put the panels on it. And they have, I believe it's 4 EV chargers for their customers underneath the panels. These panels are also what they call bifacial. They've got a clear background, and the sun will go through here, and you can see, you can't see much of it, but it's just some that goes through it. If it bounces off of a light-colored car and comes back up, it'll make some energy on the backside. And yours, the one we're proposing to put on yours, are going to be bifacial because you've got a white roof. Yours they don't get a whole lot, I would have guessed, bouncing up there, but every little bit counts. But yours would, on sunny days, would have a pretty good white, close to the panel. And this is out in the country, some pretty nice homes, and they didn't want it on the roof, and they must have a big house because that's a lot of panels for a house. Okay, let's talk a little bit about what components make up a solar system. Of course, you got the solar panels, and when the sunshine rays hit them, they produce DC electricity, which is what you have in a battery. You also have to have a rack of some sort, either for a ground mount or up on the roof. On the roofs, we put a rack that sets them up about 4 inches off of there, so there's air moving through there. It keeps the panels cooler, it keeps your roof cooler. On your flat roof, you're gonna be tilted like that first church, or that church. And then it's DC, and your electric uses AC, so we've got to run it through an inverter that changes it from DC to AC with a sine wave that is the same sine wave as coming in from the electric company. So it matches their sine wave. So your light bulbs or your computer, they don't know, is that solar power or is that coming from Evergy? Because that sine waves. And then they'll put a bidirectional meter on here, so if you're overproducing, making more than you're using, it'll roll the meter back. We'll talk a little bit more about that. So net metering. There's 2 ways that the electric companies can offer you if you want to hook into them. There's what's called parallel generation, which the federal government several years ago I don't remember the date, but it was before I started, probably 20 years ago. They had a rule that says if somebody wants to have green energy, like a wind turbine or a solar system, and they want to connect into the grid that they're with, the solar or the electric company has to let them, but they do parallel generation. And parallel generation takes longer to make a payback, and I'll kind of show you some examples of that. And then the electric companies, many of them offer net metering, which is a better way of, your payback's quicker. And that has to do with the rolling it backwards. So most people will get net metering if it's available. Some of the rural electrics and some of the cities only offer the parallel generation. But most of the rural co-ops offer it, and Evergy has net metering. For a homeowner, the largest system you can put on for net metering is 15. For a commercial like your church, we can go up to 100. And that's AC, and we'll explain that in a little while. So during the month, how net metering works is during the month, during the day, if you're not at home or you just got a sunny day, a lot of times it's spring and fall when we're overproducing, when we're not running our air conditioner or our furnace. And the meter will go backwards. And then at night, you can pull it, because as soon as it gets dark, this solar doesn't make anything. So you can pull that forward, and within the month, that's your bills, it's the same price going both ways. If I remember right, I think your electrics average about 11 cents a kilowatt that we can replace. So it'd go backwards 11 cents, forward 11 cents. At the end of a month, the electric company will true you up, and they'll look, did you, like a lot of times in January and February, we're not making enough. You just have to buy the extra at 11 cents. If you overproduce, a lot of times in the spring and fall, then whatever let's say you had 100 kilowatt hours you overproduced, they will pay you, actually it's a credit on your bill at 2 cents a kilowatt hour. So you get a little bit for it, but you don't get near as much as if you're rolling it back and using it at the same time. So with parallel generation, let's go to the next picture. So this is a usage from 1 o'clock at night till the next 24 hours. The blue line is the usage of this particular home or business. The yellow line's where the solar's making, where We're making solar. So about 7:30 in the morning it comes up. Doesn't make too much for the first couple hours, but it really takes off on a full sunny day. This is a full sunny day. And then it slides down here. Well, you wake up in the morning, you get breakfast, then you head off to work. You come home, you make dinner, maybe turn on a washing machine or some other, watch TV. And so we usually use more in the evening time. Well, if you're on net metering, all this goes here and you can pull it back. And in this day, they imported 14 and they exported 20, they imported 19 and they exported 29. So they actually exported more than they used that day of 10 kilowatts. So they might use the next day or the next day if it's rainy. And if you were on parallel generation, instead of getting the full price every day, if you're making this, they're not going to roll it back. They just pay you the 2.5, 3 cents what it costs them to make it for this if you're on parallel generation. So that's why it takes longer. We've sized yours at the maximum as close as we can get to 100 kW size. We've got two 50 kW kilowatt inverters. So that's 100. And so because the panels don't make their full wattage, we can actually put more DC on here but have the AC. And so you guys are at the max as far as if you wanted to do net metering. And then this kind of shows you a usage. These are the months. So in the wintertime, we're not making as much. This is the usage. I'm going to guess it's an all-electric house because it's got high winter bills, about as high as the summer. And then this is the solar production. We make about twice as much during the month of June as we would in December. That's just longer days, a lot more sunshine than December. Some people say, well, how much sun does Kansas have? And if you look down here at sunny California or sunny Florida, and then you look up here, you get a little bit past Topeka here, Kansas is fairly sunny. I know my house, if it were in Dodge City, facing the same direction, same slope and everything, it would make 12% more energy than I do in Lawrence. Just be more sunny days out west. About a year ago, Google Earth came up with what they call it Google Project Sunroof. If you're in a city like Topeka, Kansas City, I think Manhattan and Lawrence, I know Lawrence is. I don't think Emporia or Salina are, but you can type in your address and it will take you and show you how much sun are you getting. The brighter the yellow, the more sunlight you're getting. This is our home, and our panels are right here, right underneath that. My neighbor, a year ago, I sold him solar. His tree, he's got a tree out here, but that's a ash tree. And the ash borers have already, about a third of his top about a third of the tree is already dead. So he's going to be taking it out probably next summer. And then he'll have all this sunny. He's got some right here facing southeast, and he bought an EV car this last year. So if you want to check and see if your home's good for solar, that's an easy way to do it. And this is just a final picture on this is this house is facing west here, and then on the south side they have panels. And I think my first customer that bought an EV car that I was aware of, and he bought a Tesla. That was back in 2018. All right, well. Whoops, where did that? Any questions yet? Okay, let's take a look. Oh, yeah.
Hail, et cetera, are these panels?
That's a very good question.
Are you going to be replacing them?
So that very first house I had there, that was the blue one, it was a log cabin type. She was on my extension board when we did it for the extension office. And when I got to working for Cromwell, she says, come out, her husband and her, they were a 4-H family. I'd been to their place several times. They even had a little pond. They let me take my grandkids fishing. But she called me up a year later and says, hey, we got hail damage. And I said, did it knock out the windshield of your car? Because that's what we tell people. And Linnea started laughing on the phone. And I said, why are you laughing at me? She says, how many times you been to my place? Probably 12, 15, I don't know. Well, we have a barn and we have a garage and we park our vehicles in there, so you can't prove that it'll knock out the windshield. But she had 30 panels and it hit 3 of them across there, and it hit one of them with 2 of them. She had golf ball size pictures. And it must have hit them straight on, because the back of the roof, her insurance agent looked at it and he says, there's not a scratch back here. So it must have pretty much hit them straight on in order to break them. And I think she was on Farm Bureau Insurance, paid us to replace the 3 panels. It's not too hard to replace them. I can't remember if it's Allstate or State Farm. I've had customers who were on whichever one it is, and they said their insurance agent did not raise theirs because they said you're going to protect that from small hail, especially if you got a composition roof. The panels can protect it from small hail. What's that?
Are you looking at it to be at least golf ball size to cause damage?
Yes. And I would bet if it was golf ball, it'd have to hit it straight on. It'd have to be a pretty stout wind too. I forget exactly, but on the warranties, or if you look into it, I think it's golf ball size at 80 miles an hour or something like that. So they're pretty tough. Okay, electrical storm damage. I don't know that we've had any hit by lightning. Mine, one night I woke up, or the next morning, one night I woke up because there was a thunderstorm going on, pretty loud. And the next morning I got up and went downstairs, and I have the inverter in our basement, and it was a red light. It's supposed to be green. So I walk over there and tap on it, and it gives me an error message, and I call up one of our, it was a Saturday, one of our install guys, and they said, well, I think it blew the fuses that are on the outside, and there's a disconnect switch. So I went out and looked at them. Well, you can't tell if they're blown or not. But I replaced them that day, and it came back on. They had protected the system. Yes?
How many panels are you talking about? What's the weight? Because it's real cold.
Well, I'd have to look in here. I think. We have an engineer look at, I mean, if you go with it, we come out and we do a complete site visit. We get into every attic crawl space we can get. If you have plans for your building, we take pictures of those. We look at all the electric, and then we create a design, and we have an engineer that has to look at it and see and make sure it's okay. Most flat roofs that I know of, we've not had any trouble with them because they're built pretty solid. Hang on. 216. Be on the flat roofs. We didn't put any on this. This has a membrane, but it's on an angle, and you'd have to fasten them down on an angle. So we just went with the flat roofs over here. All right, good questions.
What is the replacement cost of a panel?
For one panel, probably, with all the labor and everything, maybe $400, $300, something like that. Depends on how far we have to drive. But the panels aren't real expensive. And it's amazing, the panels we put on the extension offers were 220 watts. The panels we're installing on most residentials are 400 watts, so it's almost gone up twice in 10 years how efficient they've become. And then yours, because yours is a foot longer, you're a commercial one, you'll have a silver frame, but nobody's going to see it, is a foot longer, and so it's 480 watts.
Is there a time frame that the panels expire, have got through their end of life?
So the panels, just about every tier 1 panel I know has a 25-year power performance warranty. Now, we expect them, if there's no damage from a storm or something, they could run out 40 years. The technology's been around, but used to be we couldn't afford it. I bought ours in 2014, and it had come down to where it was about a 10-year payback for a homeowner. Used to be, wasn't very long before that, it was 20-year payback. So these panels have been used in what goes around the earth, and they've got the not skylights. Oh yeah, boy, over 60 mine. Anyway, there's ones that go around and power these, like the internet and that type of thing. And they've been going for a long time. And then the U.S. Armed Forces out in deserts have used it for a long time. They could afford it because we helped them buy it. But so that technology's been around for a while.
If these panels were on the roof and we had to resurface our roof, what kind of issues might we have?
So, yeah, when this membrane roof wears out, they will need us to move them, take them off, because you can't just pick them up and slide it under. Yeah, so I think Steve had said he talked with a roofer to check it out ahead of time, and see.
Is that better?
What's that?
Is the roof the best option, or we have this vacant lot sitting over here? Can we use that instead of take the risk with the roof?
You can do ground mounts. They're more expensive because you got to have a lot more pipe. Where on a roof, you've pretty much got, there's not much to the racking compared to putting it in on a ground mount. And then you have to trench your electricity over to wherever you're plugging it in. Where here, we'll just go through conduit. So ground mounts, yeah, people use them.
The other thing that we have a problem, if you look in the south parking lot, right through the medium is an easement, a sewer easement that goes from Fairlawn to the woods. So we would have to be going through an easement that they can cut the line anytime they want to.
Yeah.
Because that's their right as a city, because there's a big easement that goes right through that line.
Just a second.
So technology is getting better and better every day. And when or if will it occur that we'll no longer have these big panels, but we'll have a flat panel that will attach directly to a roof without the...
Racking? Yeah. If I knew that, I'd invest in that company right away. So technology has been getting better all the time, and that's one of the things our extension office asked our company was, so we buy these today, and in a year they're making bigger ones more efficient. And our owner, Aaron, says, well, it's like your computer or your watch or your phone. I mean, when I buy a phone, in a month I could go back and get a fancier, bigger. He says, if the price and it'll do what you want it to do, and you're okay with the price, you might as well go ahead and buy it then, because if you just keep waiting until it's never going to get where it stops. And it's the same way with solar. I mean, things get better. My panels, yeah, they're 250 watts rather than 400, but they're doing what they said they'd do. So I'm okay with it. Why don't we go through these, and then we'll go through the whole thing, and I think it'll bring up some more questions and answers that we do here.
Excuse me. Since there's the gaps between them, is there, what would it be the possibility of us still having roof damage and then having to fight with doing that, like you said, having to get the stuff moved so that it could be fixed?
What's that?
Since there are gaps between each panel, there's the possibility of us having roof damage and having to get the roof fixed where they're not covered. And we'd have to, I mean, how often are you seeing that?
So, yes, where the panels are not, and there's space there, because there's sunlight, there's rain hitting it, it will wear out faster than where the panels are protecting your roof. It's kind of like on a house. I mean, where my panels are, you can look under there and the roof is not deteriorating at all because they're protected from sunlight. But around my panels, someday they're going to have to replace those shingles. Yep. So you're on Evergy. This is the front side of your bill. And I'm going to mention here, there's a city franchise fees. That's kind of like a sales tax. And it's 6% when I divided it out. That's one of the costs that it goes up the more you use. So if you buy solar, your solar is going to be able to affect that cost, the franchise fee. This is the back. You have these other bills here, the lights and the pole. I'd never seen a pole that you had to pay for, but I've seen a lot of lights. So those lights are on their own meter, and the pole probably doesn't have a meter. You just pay $350. And so we're not including that in your bills that solar can take care of. So left of that, we've got, this is January. It's 106 to 206, so we're counting this as a January month. Down here, I've underlined the energy usage. In January, you used 14,103, almost 104. There's a demand kilowatt, 40. I don't know exactly how they do the adjusted demand kilowatt 41, but we don't pay attention to these numbers because they're not. These are the numbers down here that are the charges. So your basic service fee is $22.73, and that's the same every month. So we count that as a fixed cost. And other fixed cost is let's see. Once in a while, I'll be to a place, it's usually out in the country, farm, that has a surge protector out by the pole, and they're paying their electric company $10 a month for that surge protector. That's a fixed cost that solar's not going to make a difference in. Doesn't matter how much solar we produce, we're not going to change that 22 or. And then the energy use is $693. And then the demand comes from above. The demand is created. Evergy looks at your electric bill or your electric usage every 15 minutes the whole month long. And wherever you've got the highest usage in that month, evidently it was a demand of 40, then they charge you a demand charge. Very few residential, and Evergy doesn't on residential, but I think I had one rural electric did, had a demand charge number. But most commercial businesses have demand charges. And the demand, solar, we can't guarantee that's going to go backwards or be lowered by it, because your demand could happen at night. It could happen first thing in the morning when you come in church and you turn on the air conditioners before the sun gets up very high. So we call that a fixed cost as well, and don't include that in the amount that can be taken care of by solar. And then you add those up. Let me go down here. So the way we find out how much that month is kilowatt hours, the cost for it, which helps us then calculate your savings. We take this 1614, 1398. We add the franchise fee because that is a moving target. We take away the service fee because that's a fixed cost, and we take away the demand number because that's a fixed cost. We come up with 1524, and we divide that by your total usage, 14,104, and it comes up with 10.8 cents. In a minute, you'll see your whole year's worth. Generally, winter months are cheaper than summer months. I know this gets a little hectic, but it's the next slide. So this shows you your kilowatt hour usage, and of course, it's just like if you don't have an all-electric home or an all-electric church, your winter or your summer bills are going to be higher because of the air conditioner. If you've got natural gas or propane furnaces, they're lower in the winter. And so you can see the spread here and the total charges. So about 142. And I did look, I put all the numbers, the charges, the demands, and everything on this to help me create this. The lowest demand of the whole year was 163 in January. And in June, July, and August, your demands numbers, your costs were over $600. Almost $674 was the high. But as you can see, usually the summer months are more expensive. So if we can get rid of a kilowatt hour, we're saving 12 cents. That helps pay off the system. This chart is used in when I first came to the business, they had their own proposal software, and it was an Excel spreadsheet. We've used this since then, that it does a very good job. I know if I use this and later on somebody wants to say, hey, how's our bills? What should they look at? I can take them back to this and say, well, this is this year's bill. Now, it could be different next year. One year we had, when our January production was 30% lower than the average of the previous 7 years. So we didn't make much that time. So these numbers will vary over time. We now use an Aurora, which makes the proposal that you have, which is a lot prettier. And this is a page we will go through, but I've had people, if you'd had a chance to, if you gave me the 12 months and you'd looked at it, you would say, so here's the utility bill pre-solar, and they'd look at that and they'd say, that's not the same as our bills are showing. The way Aurora does is they don't mess with the taxes and the demand numbers and the fixed fees. They go in and pull out what's the kilowatt hours, what's the cost of those kilowatt hours that's going to be replaced, can be replaced by solar. So it's a little different mindset than the way we had done it for a long time. But I go in and look at those, and I take what ours are, and if I add the fixed cost to this, then it's very close to what our previous one would show. And if I add the fixed cost to this, it would be very close to what our Excel spreadsheet was showing. So it's just a little different way to do it, but if somebody goes, so let's say next year you went with it, and next year you say, hey, this $58 in May was $200 higher, and we used the same amount. Well, that demand in there could be what's making that the difference, is your demand's in it, all your fixed costs are in your bill, so they're going to look bigger than what the amount that you're actually saving. I know that's a little complicated. But in case somebody had ever asked it, we would be replacing about 68 cents. So do I have any questions about billing? And there's every electric company can do it their own way on how they do the billing. It's a nightmare sometimes. KCPL, which is Evergy, and Westar, which is Evergy, they do it different. They don't even look alike, but it all works. All right, let's go through our So this says 103, and that's more than the 100 that I talk about. So this is a DC size, 103 DC. And so your two, and the reason this doesn't, the way they get that is they take your panels, the number of panels, times the 480 216 times 480, you'd come up with this. There'd be a zero on here, but 103 kW. Your inverter determines how much it's going to let through the inverter back out onto the system. And that's what AC is, what counts when it comes to Evergy. How much AC are you sending back? And so if we stay at 100, you can have a little bit more panels. The panels don't make their 480 watts probably ever, because the 480 watts is measured in a 70-degree climate room. When they come off the manufacturing, they go in here, they push the button, this known amount of light shines straight down on them, perfectly straight, and they measure it. If it says 479, it goes into 475 watt. If it says 480 to up to 484.9, it'll go into 480. But you get them out in real life, heat, I used to think, well, you want it hot because that's going to work, but electricity is more efficient when it's cold. And so, and how often is the sun going to be facing straight at it on a cool day? Yours will be making more in the summer because it's tilted 10 degrees rather than 35. If you had an all-electric home or business and you had high winter bills, we would want it tipped further. But for somebody that's got high air conditioner bills, having it not so tipped is better for them. So you would stay in net metering. Let me get this. Whoops. Thought it would make it bigger. No. Okay. There's some disclaimers that, the weather's going to be different each year. We don't know exactly what the bills will do, how fast they'll inflate or not. And so we put in an escalation rate of 4% for Evergy. When I first came here, Evergy was raising it quicker, so my system went in under a 7% inflation. Most people that have much knowledge of electricity think it's going to go up faster than 4% in the future because we've got all these EV cars coming online, and most of the electric companies need to upgrade their grids, and that's going to cost money. But we put it in at 4%. Project a 30-year life. The panel's 25-year warranty, but should last longer. They will degrade a little bit over time. And then that's what we put in the degradation factor. As they get older, they will make less. Now, the ones at the extension office, I can show you in 10 years, I bet you they haven't degraded 5% at all. Those were some good panels. And this is I'm not going to go through all these, but Aaron and his wife, we've got others. That's our office in Lawrence. If you're ever there, come by and I'll give you a little tour. Our shop looks kind of messy, but and then other people that are, most of them are NABCEP certified. Then we get down here. Here's kind of the first year. You have an annual energy consumption of 200,825 kilowatts. And your bill, it showed there was $21,007. If you add the fixed cost into it, it's closer to $27,000. The system size, the first year estimated production. So the way we estimate production is there's computer programs that do it. You put in the zip code for where you're located, because that has to do, we've got weather data from years back. How much sun on what days and what month. Then you put in what directions your panel facing. Yours would be facing due south, which is the most advantageous, and you put in the slope of it. And so that's how it comes up, then it predicts how much electricity you'll make. And then there's some 30-year estimates if things went just like the predictions we have. We think we'd rather under-promise and over-proof, so we think the degradation won't be that bad and you'll probably make the payments quicker. What's really helped churches, I think I'm working with 7 churches. I've had one sign the other night, or Monday, and 2 others that's already signed this year. They call it tax credit, but it's a direct payment for nonprofits. They've never had it until the Inflation Reduction came out. So by waiting this long now, Clyde's church didn't get to use it because it wasn't available at that time. So the total cost, I'll mention cost too. So when I gave you a proposal let me look here, I got the dates. It was in July 20th. We could get to SILFAB 500, so that was a little bit bigger panel. And the total cost at that time was $226 for basically the same size system. It was 104, but instead of 103. Then we had some panels. The first time we saw any decline in prices in equipment since the fall of 21 was this spring. We finally had some prices took off when COVID time and we had trouble getting certain parts, but it started coming down in May. And so the SILFAB panels dropped in price. I sent a price of $213,000 in October, but I don't think I sent the actual proposal because I knew you weren't going to be ready to look at it. And then we just repriced it here in January, and the 480 bifacials at 103, the price has dropped down to $206,000. So you're saving $20,000 from if we'd assigned it in July. Now, is it going to go down that fast in the future? We don't know. We actually didn't think it would probably come down much because of how many incentives are in the Inflation Reduction Act. But fortunately, it is coming down. And there's more companies building solar production plants in the United States now, too. So the 30%, you can call it a direct payment, $61,000, and so that would leave a remaining cost of $144,000. And a payback of approximately 8.9 years. I'd have to look in the Excel spreadsheet to know how much is labor and how much is parts. I'm a salesman, and they don't let me see the prices and stuff. Yeah.
My question goes into where the insurance increased to cover that equipment replacement costs.
It depends on the insurance company how much. When I went in, I told my insurance agent, hey, mine was 14 panels, and at that time it was $14,000. I said, I'm buying this here, and he says, I'll look it up. He says, that's going to be $50 a year. So if you're, I think it's State Farm, or I can't remember that one company, they don't raise it at all. Another company, a guy said he was in the country, and he was putting it on his shed, and he went in and talked to his insurance agent, and the agent says, well, we got X number of dollars for your whole property, and that still fits within what so we're not going to charge you any extra for it on that. But most companies are going to raise some level of insurance. I mean.
Yeah, so that's a valid question for our insurance provider prior to signing.
Yeah, we usually just tell them what the total price is, and
I have another question.
I'm going to guess somewhere around half would be maybe equipment, but it could be more than that.
Yeah. You'd said our panels were going to go in at a 10-degree angle, and then you referenced a 35-degree angle, which is, I guess, common for residential, but it's more efficient, did you say? No.
So the 35 is if you're on a house, we're going to put it whatever the house is.
Yeah.
And if there's not a whole lot of difference between a 25 and a 35. It's not a whole lot of difference. If you are doing a ground mount, and we can choose what the direction is, whatever the latitude that you live would be about what your percentage. So I think our latitude in Kansas, I think, is like 30 on the south and 35 on the north. I don't know if anybody's, but somewhere about that. So we usually put them just 30 degrees. Now, if somebody had to use a ground mount and they had way bigger bills in the summer, you could adjust that and not make it quite so steep.
Okay.
Does that help?
Why didn't we choose this roof that's already pitched?
So it's got a rubber, just like the rest of the church, and we don't want to put holes in that. I mean, I don't think there's a fastener that we would guarantee is not going to leak on that roof. Most roofs like that are either metal or composition, and in composition, we just go through the shingles through the plywood and go into one of the rafters to hook to it. And if it's metal, they usually have purlins that are going this way, and we can fasten on a purlin. I'd never really seen one quite like this. I think it's a cool idea, I bet.
So there's no counterweight.
Yeah.
Pitch of roof.
the panels and the racking on a typical home, where there's a rail and the panels, the weight is about 3.5 pounds, which is about the same as one good layer of shingles per square foot. So if somebody's already got 2 layers on it, we won't install on their house. So the Q-cell panels, we can get, they have a plant they put it in 2018 in Georgia, and a pretty good sized panel. Q-cells is one of the larger companies. Our company has used them for years. When I first started there, we were getting Q-cell panels from Poland. And then we started getting them from South Korea. So they make panels in South Korea and the US. If we can get it from the US, we'll get it that. But if they don't have that panel available, it's sold out. It's the same panel, it's just not US made. The 480s. The SMA, which is the inverter, used to have a plant in Denver, but I don't think they have one in the US anymore. SMA is one of the oldest ones in the world, and mostly German technology. But I'm pretty sure the SMA inverters did not come from America.
Since we're a nonprofit and don't pay federal tax, does that federal tax credit come right off the top?
So what you do, it's kind of like if you're a homeowner and you have a tax credit. If you get installed in 2024, then you fill out your tax form at the end of the year and get your tax credit next spring. With a church, I have not yet seen an actual document, but our boss says that there will be documents before the end of December, because it would count if you got yours in, then you would fill out that document and turn it in after the first of the year. So it doesn't come off the top of the price. Yeah. So if you're, okay, so a tax credit. If you are a homeowner or a business and eligible for tax credit, you can use it as long as you owe taxes. No. So, right, you're not. So the Inflation Reduction Act says the government's going to give 30%, and it's going to be a direct payment, and it's going to be basically a grant.
So we're going to get a check from the federal government. But not till after the first of the following year.
But not until the first of the following year, after
Correct.
the first. Okay,
Right.
thank you.
Mm-hmm. That's the way I understand it. You know, when they created that Inflation Reduction Act, they made a lot of things, whoever decided it.
We may be in kind of a special circumstance. Being with the ELCA, we don't file our taxes. We fill out all of our information, and it goes to the Synod. So I'm not sure how that would work for a tax credit since we don't actually file ourselves.
Right. No, it's going to be a direct payment. It's not actually a tax credit.
So we wouldn't have to, we just have to file the form, not actually taxes, but the form.
Right, right. Yeah, our owner made that page 7. He likes to help educate. But the Inflation Reduction Act, they made all these suggestions, and they didn't have what were the actual rules. So there's in there that if you have enough U.S.-made equipment, you can get another 10% off. But as far as we know, and my boss tries to keep track of this, there's nobody yet that says, okay, so can Q-cell, if they're made at the Q-cell plant, are those enough American that you get a 10%? If you buy an inverter or If you buy railing, if it's made in the U.S., does it have enough U.S. metal in it to get the 10%? We don't know that yet, and I hate to say that, but if you make suggestions and then advertise it, but you don't have anybody that's already sat down and figured out what the rules are, it's a little bit difficult. But yeah.
Forgive me if you've already answered this. It looks like you have proposed that we generate with solar about 70% of what we would use in an actual year. Mm-hmm. Is that it?
Yes.
Fairly
I think
close? So why not generate what you would expect to do at 100% instead of 70%?
Okay, that's a good question. Why did we come up with 68%, 70% of your usage being produced rather than go for 100? If we go bigger, then you can't have net metering. You'd have to use parallel generation. And parallel generation would take a longer payback. Yeah. I just did one today for a business in Salina, and we're only doing 38% of their usage, but that'll keep them in the net metering. And it's going to be, because they're a business and they can, it's going to be a pretty fast payback. Because a business can also depreciate equipment where a church or a homeowner can't depreciate anything. I got to get closer because.
If you had it done toward the end of the year, then you could do it right away after January. Whereas right now, we would not get that money for a whole nother year.
True.
Okay.
The thing
that can make a
is,
difference on whether people have that 60,000 that they can afford to
the thing is,
not have.
if you were a homeowner and you signed today, I would say we'll have you done in 4 to 5 months. A large commercial business like this is probably going to be 8 months before we would get you installed. So I wouldn't wait till September. Yeah.
Just an FYI, I know everyone's concerned about the tax credit, and that's actually the next presentation that will be happening, not tonight, but it is another part that we've talked, and there's more information, but I don't have all the facts, but I can tell you that we're looking at everything so that that money is taken into account immediately if we were to go forward with this, okay? And more of that will be coming. That's our next phase. Okay? Thank you.
And I might share his question is, why don't you go for 100%? Well, even if you're a homeowner, most of the electric companies have the lids on how much a homeowner can. If you're an Evergy, even if you used way more than we could only make 15 kW AC. So let's say you were you can use 20. Well, we can't give that to you because there's a limit. Also, a homeowner, Evergy, once we turn it in, they'll look back 12 months, and if they think our project's going to make more than what you used in the past 12 months, they'll reject it, and we'll have to make it a smaller one. So that's why a lot of people come up and say, hey, I want to get rid of all my bills, my electric bills. I want to build it big and just get rid of it. We've got limits and we have to abide by it. So. Okay, here's back. We've all kind of seen this, but yeah, 32%, 68% on the electric bills. And then this shows you, let me get the numbers because I've got them written down. The first year, you're putting down the money. All right, so that's a big outflow. The second year, you get the direct payment, which in this case is $61,838, and then you make a value of $14,011 from this. Well, this is not this is what you saved that year. This doesn't show you that. It's $699, but $14,011. So that's $75,800 the second year. And so that's why it shows your savings here from the direct payment and from your first year production. And then it just keeps on going down that way. And when it turns from a negative to a positive, which was in the 9th year, like it showed the previous page. If your panels do better than what we've got the degradation, then that'll go quicker. If Evergy has a higher than 4% inflation, that would go quicker as well. I like this page. Let's see, yeah, this page here. The places that are yellow are the most sunlight, kind of like that Project Good sunroof. So you can see we've got trees here. They're giving you a little shade here. That's why we stay. And then we also have to have a fire code around the outside edge. That's a federal or a city fire codes. We didn't put any here because we've got too much shade. You know, you could probably, if you didn't want to pay quite $206,000, want to get rid of a few, we could, you know, get back here to where it's more sunny and you'd have a higher efficiency, but you'd make less as well. Any questions on that?
So this is our building?
Yes.
This is our building?
Yeah, yeah. Here's the south end. This is the sanctuary. And then, is this a school? Gymnasium? Okay. I was thinking there was. And that's just from a different angle. And then here's environmental. I'm not the one that come up with those numbers, but somebody somewhere did, on how many vehicles you take off, how many trees you planted or saved. That's being good stewards of our resources. Another question I get often is, so when the panels wear out, what are we going to do with them? The gentleman that helped push it at the Colonial Church in Prairie Village, he wanted solar on his own house. He's an engineer, but he lived in a pretty nice neighborhood with those huge trees, pin oaks. But he did a lot of research, and he says in Germany they have recycling where they can recycle 95+% of a solar panel. So we don't have that yet in the U.S. I think it was 2 years ago I read an article that the Energy Department in the U.S. was going to encourage and help somebody figure out how to get a business that would be recycling them. So right now we're kind of collecting. We don't have very many because they don't wear out, but we have one where a boy was in the house cleaning his gun and he put a hole through the roof and through the panel. And so he's got a blank panel there. And we have a 10-year warranty, a workmanship warranty. The panels and the inverters come with warranties. If something goes wrong with them, you call us because we take care of them, and the company in general will help us pay for part of that at least. Here's some that are also are flat roofed, and you can see that there's spacing between the panels so that they don't shade each other. I need to get one of our guys to come over and take a drone picture of Clyde's church so we can put that in here instead of all these businesses. And then the process, like I said, it takes a little while. First thing we do after we get a check is we come and do that complete site visit. And then you start creating the documents for the engineer to look at. And then we have a payment of 10% at the first. Once we get the permitting from both the city and Evergy, then we ask for the second payment. And then once we have it installed, a lot of times the last two are pretty much together because Evergy has a 30-day period that when we're ready for them to come, they can wait 30 days if they want, but normally they don't take that long. So that's, unless we have more questions, and Clyde want to share any wisdom?
Yes, thank you, Bill. If you could hold your questions until after Clyde has had an opportunity to speak, that would be great. Clyde?
I would just have, I think, enforce what Bill said. First off, the estimates they come up with on what you're going to produce, which of course nobody knows for sure because we don't know how much the sun's going to shine next year. 3 systems that I've personally been involved with financing and so on, and a few other systems, their estimates have been right on. I mean, not within a couple percent of what the systems have produced from what they estimated. I should have taken some notes here. I was going to comment on a couple other things. Cromwell, I've worked with on, well, our church, for instance, their entire staff. I have never been so impressed with the company, from their electricians to the engineers checking the roof structure and so on. They have been just absolutely first class. And I don't know, in this case, I know a church in Lawrence that called me just last week. They were having a meeting and they had 3 estimates. I think Cromwell, they said, was the cheapest. Personally, because they are located so close to us and they've worked so long, and with the half a dozen I've been involved with friends of mine and so on, we haven't even went and got a second estimate because that's how confident we are with Cromwell's record. I'm trying to think, as the cost gets really complicated, especially with Evergy. Our church, for instance, we're producing around 90% of our electricity. Our bills only dropped by 50%. That demand charge is the killer for churches because Evergy's hitting churches with that demand charge. Most of it comes from air conditioning on Sunday mornings, which they're you know, that's not a high demand. That's strictly a profit thing for Evergy, but they're a monopoly, and it takes time to change those things. My first system, I was on demand charge, and we fought that all the way to the Supreme Court, and we won. Evergy had to refund our money, so I've been there and done that. But unfortunately, churches are still getting hit with it, and if there was some way that all the churches in Evergy's territory could organize as a single voice and talk to the KCC about it, I think that might get changed because there is no, you know, the generators are idling on Sunday morning when churches have their biggest biggest demand, which I think you had $600 and some in June or July. Yeah, that's from air conditioning at 10 o'clock on Sunday morning is where that's coming from. I think that's, if there's any other questions, I'd be glad to.
Thank you, Clyde. Are there any questions for Clyde or for Bill?
I was curious about the utility interconnect exchange. You know, you have the permit that you file with them or asking them. I think in one example you said we're going to be, you know, at 103 kilowatt system. Why would they? Sounds like they can tell you that no, that's too much. We need to back off. What's the plus and the minuses on that exchange? Is it going to? Because there's several months that, you know, between the request and then them actually putting that interconnect in, so the meter exchange,
Right,
so that we're actually online at that point several months later.
right.
Are we subject to a change in the cost of equipment, or when does that bill come due?
So, no, if you sign a contract, then that's what we're going to, if the equipment changes, we have to take care of that. Because you're doing it in good faith. And so, yeah, it's possible sometimes the prices go down, and so we come out a little bit better on it, or prices could go up a little bit. When I first started, there was a 60-day time frame from when you had to sign it to get, and now it's a 15-day one, because when inflation hit, it was like boom, 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 boom. And
Yeah,
so,
I can appreciate that for materials costs and manufacturing costs change and
right,
shipping and handling and all that.
yeah.
But the actual cost of the meter itself from the utility, is that subject to an annual tariff change, or is it going to be set
like
from? It's going to be the same in July as it is in January when they flip the switch and turn us on.
Yeah, the meter cost, the $23 a month.
The equipment costs.
Oh, the equipment costs. They just, for them, all they have to do is put a different meter in. And so, yeah, it's included in the price. But maybe
We'll know at the time of permitting that we're approved from our 103 kilowatt system, or they'll say, no, you need to dial this up or back or whatever at that time?
So you're in a position where we're going to only produce about 68, 70% of yours. And we're going to stay under that 100 kW with the two inverters that are 50 each. So we meet their specs, and they're going to let us do that. I had a homeowner in Kansas City, North Kansas City, Missouri, and she gave me the bills in January for the last 12 months, and I created her where she's going to be making about 90% of hers. Well, she didn't buy it or didn't sign it till the next year in February, I think. And then by the time we got them, so those bills were pretty much exempt because they're looking at the last 12 months. And she had somehow lowered her last 12 months 800 kilowatt hours less than when I gave her. So we had to lower that because of her using less that last 12 months. But yours, I mean, yours is enough of a gap that I don't see any way you would not be able to put that size system on. Yeah.
Just curiosity more than anything, 250 watt inverters, is there a redundancy there? If one goes down, we're still online, or is there such a thing as 100? Why do we need two?
because they don't make a 100 size. I think the 50s are the largest that SMA makes. They make a 35. And then for rural, or for homeowners, mine's a 3.5 kilowatt size system. And they go up to about 77.7 size. And then if you need more than that in rural, you just buy 2 of them. And so they don't make 100 ones, so we had to use 2 50s to come up with that 100. Yeah. And you will have online monitoring available. So your church could put up a little computer or something if they wanted people to come up and look and see how it's going. Or somebody maybe, hey, I want to do that. I'm going to keep track of this. I'm going to report to the church every once in a while what it's making.
Any other questions? Well, Bill, Clyde, I want to thank you.
I forgot one thing.
Yes.
That first church, the colonial one, what they did is they figured up how much each panel cost, and then they asked their members if they wanted to buy a panel or 2 to go on the church. And the pastor that day, when they were doing the christening, he said, we had a neighbor that doesn't even come to our church that bought a panel. They just thought it was a cool thing for the church to do. But you might try that. But thank you so much for having me over.
Well, thank you very much. And thank you, Clyde. And any of you who need to replenish your energy, there's some coffee and cookies in the back. Please partake. It is caffeinated coffee. Absolutely.